Hi, my name is Stephanie Robbins, and I am the CEO and president of Robbins Plumbing here in Phoenix, Arizona. And today I have a weird but fun tip. It never occurred to me, honestly, to talk about your hose bib. But replacing enough of them that have funny stories behind them has inspired today. So your hose bib, what is it? So it has different names depending on what part of the country you come from, but it is ultimately the outdoor faucet that you connect your hose to, your garden hose to. And man, the funny stories that I have. So first, and very important, is when you buy a garden hose, you want to stick to a garden hose that either has a brass or a stainless steel hose end, the adapter that threads onto the hose. And this is ridiculously important because cheap garden hoses have a steel on the end, and that steel actually can seize and basically weld itself on to your hose bib. Like, there is no force in nature that is going to get this thing off. You have to call a plumber out and they have to replace your hose bib. Pipe wrenches, the whole deal. Macho Man Randy Savage is not getting this thing off. So do not buy a cheap garden hose. We want to make sure that it has a brass or a stainless steel end. It's like $5 more. Make the investment. Trust me. And I'm very proud of myself for saying garden every time I said hose. The other thing that you really want to consider, I just can't. It's so funny. I don't know if that's going to hit the blooper reel or my video, but here we are. Is you don't want to leave your hose connected to your hose bib. So what happens is, again, if it can seize, but damages can happen. So if you leave your garden hose connected to the hose bib, especially in Arizona, you're at a super high risk of scalding somebody, causing damage to your hose bib. But I mean, here, man, if you leave that connected and let's say there's water left in it and someone goes, oh, hey, I'm going to have fun in the hose, I'm going to drink out of the hose, it comes out at like 200 degrees. People go to the hospital for this. So it's a really good habit to, one, protect your garden hose, which you just invested $5 more in because you were listening to me. But we want to make sure that it isn't under pressure. So if that garden hose splits, like tons of things can happen, but we don't want to scald anyone. We don't want the garden hose to split. So we want to make sure, as just a good habit, when we're done watering our plants or whatever you're doing, slip and slide, that we disconnect the hose from the hose bed. The other thing, this one's a big one. Do not use your hose bib as a hanger. It is not meant to hold weight. It is meant to distribute water. So think about it as your kitchen faucet. You wouldn't hang 100 pounds from your kitchen faucet and expect it to hold up. So what I see clients do, and it backfires, is they use it to hang their hose on. Oh, hey, and then it's still connected and it's full of water. So you have all this weight, and either your hose bib is coming out from inside the wall or it's coming up out of the ground and it's strapped to the wall outside. Either way, it's not designed to hold weight. It's meant to distribute water. So think about it as a faucet, not as a hanger. And I see all the time, clients have hoses hanging from them. I see them connected. I see the drip at the other end. I know it's on. and it ultimately ends in catastrophe. The other thing I see clients do all the time is hang their buckets from the hose bib. So you have a 5-gallon bucket, you're trying to fill it with water, you're gonna wash your car. It is not meant to hold that. So for every gallon of water is 8 pounds. You're gonna pull that hose bib out of the wall or off the wall, especially consistently over time. It's not meant to do that. Set the bucket on the ground and get a hose reel or something. Hold the hose somewhere else. Set it on the ground. Just, it's not meant to be hanging on your hose bib. The other thing to do, not to do, this happens at least a few times a year. And I always know my clients that are pet lovers. But yeah, your dog was bad, or you're trying to keep him out of the way of a party, and you strap him to your hose bib. Nope. That is one way to really ruin a party, because that dog is going to rip that thing right out of the wall. Happens every year, several times a year. Party just turned into my water is off, emergency bill for the plumber, and I'm just like, but did you yell at the dog? Because that's a high no. You can't strap your dog to your hose bib and then be mad at them when they rip it off the wall. Find a tree, something else, but your hose bib is not meant to hold your dog. The other thing that we really want to keep into check is checking for leaks. So it is really common, especially for cheaper hose bibs, that kind of thing, or old, or they're exposed to the sun all the time, or if you have hard water, for your hose bib to start dripping. And we're not checking that every day, but really put yourself on a monthly schedule to check that, because if a hose bib is leaking, it's going to do two things. It's going to attract mosquitoes and it's going to attract termites. So rather than addressing that right away because we were paying attention, it goes on for a month, maybe 2 months. You've got really green grass there all of a sudden, but you're definitely attracting mosquitoes, other bugs, but the dangerous ones. I mean, mosquitoes and termites, who can cause a ton of damage and be very expensive. So we really want to watch and make sure those aren't dripping. If they are dripping, get them addressed right away. And the other thing is to make sure that the garden hose that you have is long enough. Let's pretend that Brian didn't have his phone on in the background. But we want to make sure that the garden hose is long enough. And I've watched so many clients in my 25 years, just it's not quite far enough and they're trying to reach and they yank, right? Or not having the guards for your garden hose that keep it from getting tangled up in things. So you think it's just, a kink in your garden hose, and you just yank and then, well, now your water's off because you yanked that hose bib right off the wall or out of the wall. So you want to make sure when you're buying a garden hose that it reaches the points that you want. If that isn't the case for you, add a second hose bib closer to where, if you're a gardener or whatever, it's not usually that big of a deal. Hey, let's add another hose bib closer to where you want, so you have two shorter garden hoses versus yanking and risking pulling one off the wall. So, and then my last tip, and it's not even just a tip, this is actually dangerous. It's a code issue and it affects our entire community. But let's say you want to put on a hose bib yourself and you need to replace it, and you watched a video and hey, it doesn't seem that hard. Make sure it has a vacuum breaker. So what the vacuum breaker does is it stops anything from going back. So think of all the chemicals in your yard, or let's say a lot of clients like, hey, I'm filling my pool, all the chlorine in there. If without a vacuum breaker, something that stops anything from siphoning back, you just contaminated your potable water system with pesticides, chemicals, chlorine, who knows what. So it's a couple $1 part, but it is a code requirement. It's not just a recommendation as much as a warning. Hey, let's make sure that we all have on our hose bibs the vacuum breaker to protect our community from pesticides, chemicals, and chlorine. And you don't want any of that in your system, but once it gets past a certain, point, it can affect the city's system. And, it's a big thing. It's a dangerous thing. So we want to make sure that we're doing it right. We're doing it safely. We protect our families and everyone else's families. So I hope you found these tips helpful. I hope you found them funny. But if you have a leaking hose bib or you need an extra hose bib, definitely give a Robbins a call at 623-486-4657. You, of course, can reach out to us at our website at robinsplumbing.com.